The letter arrived at midnight, slipped under General Elias Kane's door like a thief in the night. Its wax seal, stamped with the censor's insignia, gleamed accusingly under the dim glow of his desk lamp. By dawn, Elias was certain he'd rather drown himself in the Willamette than face the man who'd written it. Portland, Oregon, 2025, was a city of bridges and secrets, where the rain-soaked streets whispered stories of rebellion and redemption. Elias Kane, 29, was a decorated Army officer, a man carved from discipline and duty, his sharp jaw and piercing gray eyes commanding respect from soldiers and civilians alike. He'd risen through the ranks with a relentless drive, his life a fortress of order until last night. Until Theo Harper. Theo, 27, was the city's youngest media censor, a curly-haired idealist with a poet's heart and a job that made him the gatekeeper of truth in a fractured world. His soft features and warm hazel eyes hid a fierce resolve, one that clashed daily with the military's iron grip on information. Last night, at a clandestine gala meant to bridge their worlds, Elias and Theo had collided first in heated debate, then in a stolen moment that left them both breathless and terrified. Elias paced his sparse apartment, the letter crumpled in his fist. Theo's handwriting was elegant, deliberate, each word a dagger. "We need to talk. Meet me at the river." Dawn. The memory of Theo's lips, warm and reckless, burned in Elias's mind. He'd spent his life burying desire, but Theo had unraveled him in a single night. Now, the weight of shame off who he was, of what he'd allowed pressed against his chest like a collapsing wall. He grabbed his coat and stepped into the pre-dawn chill. Portland's streets were quiet, the city still asleep under a blanket of fog. The Willamette River loomed ahead, its dark waters a mirror for his turmoil. Elias had always been the general unyielding, untouchable. But Theo, with his quiet courage and infuriating sincerity, had slipped past every defense. What was this? A mistake? A betrayal of everything Elias stood for? Or something more dangerous, something real? At the riverbank, Theo waited, his silhouette framed against the soft glow of the Hawthorne Bridge. His navy coat fluttered in the breeze, and his curls caught the first light of dawn. Elias's heart lurched. He wanted to run, to disappear into the mist. But Theo's gaze pinned him in place. "You came," Theo said, his voice low but steady. "I wasn't sure you would." Elias's throat tightened. "I shouldn't have. Last night was..." "Don't." Theo stepped closer, his eyes searching Elias's face. "Don't call it a mistake. Not yet." The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken truths. Elias had spent years hiding who he was, burying his desires under medals and missions. In the military, being openly gay was a risk, a career ender. Even in 2025, Theo, though, wore his identity like armor, unapologetic and unafraid. Last night, in a shadowed corner of the gala, their argument about censorship had turned into something else, a kiss that felt like defiance, like freedom. But now, in the cold light of morning, Elias feared it was a trap. "Why did you write that letter?" Elias asked, his voice rough. "What do you want from me?" Theo's lips parted, but before he could answer, a distant shout broke the silence. Footsteps echoed on the path. Soldiers. Elias realized, his pulse spiking. His unit. They weren't supposed to be here. Had someone seen them last night? Had Theo betrayed him? "Elias." "Wait," Theo said, grabbing his arm as Elias turned to flee. "It's not what you think." But Elias's instincts screamed danger. He pulled free, his boots sinking into the damp earth as he backed away. The river roared behind him, tempting him to jump, to let its currents erase his shame. Theo's eyes widened, pleading, but Elias couldn't trust him, not yet. The gala had been a rare moment of truce, a glittering event at the Portland Art Museum where military brass and civilian leaders mingled uneasily. Elias had been there to represent the Army's Public Affairs Division, his starched uniform a shield against the chaos of civilian life. Theo, as a censor, was there to monitor the press, his sharp wit cutting through the room's polite tension. Their paths shouldn't have crossed, but fate or something crueler had other plans. It started with a debate. Theo had challenged Elias on the military's control over information, his voice ringing with conviction. "You can't bury the truth forever," he'd said, his hazel eyes flashing. Elias, trained to deflect, had countered with cold logic. "Order requires sacrifice. You destabilize everything." The crowd had watched, riveted, as their words sparred like swords. But later, in a quiet alcove, the argument shifted. Theo's hand brushed Elias's, a spark that ignited something neither could ignore. The kiss that followed was desperate, forbidden, a collision of two worlds that should never have met. For Elias, it was a moment of surrender, a crack in the armor he'd worn for years. For Theo, it was a declaration, a refusal to hide who he was. Now, as Elias stood on the riverbank, the memory felt like a fever dream. The approaching soldiers were closer, their voices sharp with urgency. Elias's mind raced. Theo worked for the censorship board. Had he reported Elias to protect himself? Was this meeting a setup? "Elias, listen to me," Theo said, his voice urgent. "I didn't betray you. Those soldiers' theory not here for us." "Then why are they here?" Elias snapped, his fists clenched. The river's pull was stronger now, its dark promise whispering escape. Theo hesitated, then pulled a small device from his pocket, a recorder, its red light blinking. "I've been investigating something. Corruption in your unit. I didn't want to drag you into it, but after last night..." "Corruption?" Elias's voice was ice. "You think I'm part of it?" "No." Theo's eyes were fierce. "But I think you're in danger. And I think you know more than you're letting on." The soldiers were almost upon them now, their flashlights cutting through the fog. Elias's world tilted. Theo wasn't just a censor, was a threat, a man digging into secrets Elias had sworn to protect. But as Theo's hand reached for his, warm and steady, Elias felt the spark again. Trust or betrayal? Shame or salvation? The river waited. But so did Theo. The soldiers' boots crunched on the gravel path, their flashlights slicing through the dawn mist. Elias's heart pounded as he faced Theo, the recorder in Theo's hand a ticking bomb. "What the hell are you playing at, Harper?" he hissed, stepping back, his eyes darting between Theo and the approaching figures. "I'm trying to save you," Theo said, his voice low but fierce. "There's a leak in your unit, Elias. Someone's selling military secrets to private contractors. I've been tracking it for months. And last night, I got too close." Elias's mind reeled. Corruption in his unit. He'd heard whispers late night meetings, coded messages, but he'd dismissed them as paranoia. He was a general, not a detective. His job was to lead, not to question. But Theo's words struck a nerve, unearthing doubts he'd buried under duty. "Why drag me into this?" he demanded. "Why now?" Theo's gaze softened, but his grip on the recorder tightened. "Because after last night, I couldn't let you walk into a trap. You're not the traitor, Elias, but you're a target." The soldiers were close now, their voices sharp with command. "General Kane." One called, a familiar voice. Lieutenant Mara Cole, 32, a no-nonsense officer with a buzz cut and a loyalty Elias had never questioned. But as her flashlight beam caught Theo's face, her expression hardened. "Step away from him, sir. He's under investigation." Elias froze. Investigation? Theo. His instincts screamed to trust Mara, but Theo's eyes pleading, unguarded, held him captive. Last night's kiss flashed in his mind, a reckless moment that had cracked open his carefully guarded world. He couldn't unfeel it, couldn't unsee the man standing before him, risking everything. "Mara, stand down," Elias ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "Explain." Mara hesitated, her jaw tight. "We got a tip. Harper's been leaking classified intel to the press. He's dangerous, sir." Theo laughed, a bitter sound. "Dangerous? I'm the one trying to expose the real threat. Check your ranks. Lieutenant. Someone's playing you. Elias's head spun. Theo's recorder. The soldiers. The accusation sit was too much. Too fast. He wanted to believe Theo. But years of training screamed caution. Give me the recorder, he said, holding out his hand. Theo's eyes searched his. A flicker of hurt crossing his face. You don't trust me. I don't know you. Elias snapped. But the words tasted like ash. He did know Theo knew the warmth of his touch. The fire in his arguments. The courage in his defiance. But trust. That was a bridge Elias had never crossed. Theo handed over the recorder, his fingers brushing Elias's for a fleeting moment. Listen to it. Then decide. Mara and her team closed in, their weapons lowered but ready. Elias pocketed the recorder, his mind a battlefield of doubt and desire. Take him to base, he told Mara, his voice cold. But no cuffs. I'll handle this. As the soldiers escorted Theo away, his hazel eyes locked onto Elias's, a silent plea that cut deeper than any order. Elias turned toward the river, its dark waters still calling. He could jump, let it swallow his shame, his fear. But Theo's touch lingered, a tether pulling him back. Back at the base, Elias locked himself in his office, the recorder burning a hole in his pocket. The military compound, a sprawling fortress on the outskirts of Portland, was a maze of concrete and protocol. Elias had always found comfort in its rigidity, but now it felt like a cage. He played the recorder, Theo's voice filling the room calm, precise, detailing encrypted messages, shady deals, names Elias recognized. Colonel Raymond Holt, 45, a grizzled veteran with a penchant for power. Major Lena Ortiz, 38, a logistics expert with a hidden bank account. The evidence was damning, but incomplete. Theo had been close to cracking the case, but he needed Elias's access to finish it. Elias leaned back, his head throbbing. If Theo was right, his Unitas family was rotten at its core. If Theo was wrong, Elias had just staked his career on a man he barely knew. A man he'd kissed in a moment of weakness. A man who could ruin him. A knock at the door jolted him. Mara entered, her expression unreadable. Harper's in holding. Sir. But there's something else. We found a burner phone in his apartment. It's got messages to a journalist someone named Quinn Adler. Elias's stomach dropped. Quinn Adler, 30, was a firebrand reporter for the Portland Free Press, known for exposing government secrets. If Theo was working with Quinn, he wasn't just a censor, was a revolutionary. And Elias was caught in the crossfire. Bring me the phone, Elias said, his voice tight. Mara nodded and left, but her glance lingered, heavy with suspicion. Elias knew she was watching him, waiting for a misstep. He'd always been the perfect soldier, but perfection was a fragile thing. That night, Elias visited Theo in holding. The cell was stark, lit by a single bulb, but Theo sat with a quiet dignity, his curls falling into his eyes. You listen to it, he said, not a question. Elias nodded. You're playing a dangerous game. Theo, if you're wrong about this, I'm not. Theo cut in. And you know it. You've seen the cracks. Elias. The late-night meetings. The missing files. You're just too loyal to admit it. Elias bristled. Loyalty is what keeps us alive. Loyalty to what? Theo stood, stepping closer to the bars. A system that forces you to hide who you are. That punishes you for feeling. His voice softened. Last night wasn't just a mistake. Elias. It was you. Letting yourself be human. Elias's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to retreat behind duty. But Theo's words were a mirror, reflecting truths he'd buried for years. He'd spent his life running from himself, from the boy who'd once dreamed of love without shame. Theo saw that boy, and it terrified him. I need time, Elias said finally, turning away. Don't do anything stupid. Theo. As he left, Theo's voice followed him. Don't jump into that river. Elias. You're stronger than that. Elias didn't sleep. The recorder's revelations gnawed at him. Each name Holt, or ties a betrayal that cut deeper than he'd expected. By midnight, he was back at his desk. The burner phone Mara had recovered lying beside a cold cup of coffee. Its messages to Quinn Adler were cryptic but damning. File secured. Meet at the usual spot. T. Elias's fingers hovered over the phone, torn between smashing it and calling Quinn himself. Theo was either a hero or a traitor, and Elias was running out of time to decide. Portland's skyline glittered beyond his window, a city of secrets cloaked in rain. Elias, 29, had built his life on control, but Theo Harper, 27, had shattered it with a single night. That kiss fierce, unguarded, had awakened something Elias had buried since he was a teenager. Sneaking glances at boys in his small Ohio town. He joined the army to escape, to become someone untouchable. Now, Theo's defiance threatened to unravel it all. Mara's report on the burner phone had raised flags across the base. Colonel Holt, a hulking man with a temper as volatile as his ambition, had already called for Theo's interrogation. He's a threat to national security. Holt had barked at a briefing, his cold blue eyes scanning the room. Elias had nodded, playing the loyal general, but his gut twisted. Holt's name was on Theo's recorder. Was he covering his tracks? Elias slipped out of the base at 2 a.m., the burner phone tucked in his coat. He needed answers, and Quinn Adler was his only lead. The journalist's address was in a rundown loft in southeast Portland, a maze of graffiti-covered warehouses and flickering streetlights. Elias knocked, his pulse racing, half expecting a trap. Quinn opened the door, their sharp cheekbones and piercing green eyes catching the dim light. At 30, they were a whirlwind of charisma and defiance. Their non-binary identity a quiet rebellion against the world's rigid lines. General Kane, Quinn said, leaning against the doorframe. Didn't expect a house call from the Army's golden boy. I'm not here for games, Elias said, holding up the phone. You're working with Theo Harper. Tell me why. Quinn's smirk faded. They stepped aside, letting Elias into a cluttered loft filled with laptops and stacks of papers. Theo's been feeding me intel on a black market deal, Quinn said, pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. Weapons, data, you name it. Your unit's involved, General, and someone's getting rich. Elias's jaw tightened. You're accusing my people based on what? Theo's word. Not just his. Quinn slid a flash drive across the table. Encrypted files. Payments to offshore accounts. Names you'll recognize. Theo was supposed to get me the final piece. But then you two got distracted. Their eyes gleamed with mischief. Elias flushed, the memory of Theo's lips searing his mind. This isn't about me. Isn't it? Quinn leaned forward. Theo's risking everything for you. Kane. He could have run, but he stayed. For you. The words hit like a punch. Elias grabbed the flash drive and left, the rain soaking his uniform as he walked back to his car. Quinn's evidence corroborated Theo's recorder. Holt and Ortiz were selling secrets, undermining the very system Elias had sworn to protect. But trusting Theo meant trusting his own heart, and that was a battle Elias wasn't sure he could win. Back at the base, Theo sat in his cell, his face bruised from a rough interrogation. Elias's stomach churned as he entered, the sight of Theo's injuries igniting a protective rage he hadn't expected. Who did this? He demanded. Theo managed a weak smile. Holt's goons. They're scared. Elias. They know I'm close. Elias knelt by the bars, his voice low. I met Quinn. I have the files. But I need the truth. Theo, are you using me? Theo's eyes, still bright despite the bruises, met his. I'm in love with you, Elias. That's the truth. And it's why I'm still here, even when I should have run. The confession stole Elias's breath. Love. A word he'd never dared to touch, now staring him in the face. He wanted to reach through the bars, to pull Theo close, but fear held him back. If I help you, Elias said, I'm risking everything. I know, Theo whispered. But you're already risking everything by being here. Elias stood, his mind a storm. He left the cell, the flash drive heavy in his pocket. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the Willamette's dark waters reflected the city's lights. He thought of jumping, of letting the river take his shame, his fear. But Theo's words echoed, I'm in love with you. For the first time, Elias wondered if he could be brave enough to love back. Elias stood outside the base, the flash drive in his hand, a grenade waiting to detonate. The evidence was clear. Colonel Holt and Major Ortiz were selling military secrets, funneling millions to private contractors while soldiers risked their lives on falsified intel. But exposing them meant betraying the only life Elias had ever known in trusting Theo, a man who'd already turned his world upside down. The Portland dawn was breaking, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Elias, 29, had spent his life running from himself. But Theo's confession, I am in love with you, had cracked something open. Theo, 27, bruised but unyielding, was a mirror to Elias's buried desires, a reminder of the boy he'd once been, before the army taught him to hide. Now, with the truth in his hands, Elias faced a choice, duty or love, safety or freedom. He returned to his office, locking the door. The flash drive's files revealed a web of corruption-encrypted emails, bank transfers, even a coded message scheduling a deal tonight at a warehouse by the river. Elias's hands shook as he recognized Holt's signature on a document approving a weapons shipment that never reached the front lines. His mentor, the man who'd pinned his stars, was a traitor. A knock at the door startled him. Mara Cole, 32, stood there, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Sir, we need to talk about Harper. Holt's pushing for a court-martial. Says he's got evidence Theo's been leaking to the press for months. Elias's pulse spiked. Holt was moving fast, covering his tracks. What evidence? He asked, keeping his voice steady. A recorded call, Mara said. Harper and Quinn Adler, planning to publish classified intel. Holt wants you to sign off on the charges. Elias's mind raced. The call could be fabricated. Holt had the resources. But if Elias refused, he'd tip his hand. I'll review it, he said, dismissing her. Mara's glance lingered, and Elias knew she was watching him. Loyalty was a currency on this base, and his was running thin. He needed to act. Slipping the flash drive into his pocket, Elias headed to the holding cells. Theo was there, his curls matted with sweat, his hazel eyes bright with defiance. You're back, Theo said, a flicker of hope in his voice. I have the files, Elias said, keeping his voice low. Holt's planning a deal tonight. I'm going to stop it. Theo's eyes widened. You're going after him. Elias, if you're caught, I know the risks. Elias cut in. But I need you to trust me now. Theo reached through the bars, his hand grazing Elias's. I do. Always have. The touch sent a jolt through Elias, a reminder of the night that had changed everything. He pulled away, his heart pounding. Stay put. I'll get you out. That night, Elias drove to the warehouse district, the flash drive and Theo's recorder tucked in his coat. The Willamette River glinted nearby, its dark pull a constant temptation. The warehouse was a hulking shadow, its windows dark but for a faint glow inside. Elias parked a block away, his military training kicking in. Move fast. Stay low. Trust no one. Inside, he found Holt and Ortiz, their voices low as they negotiated with a suited man Elias didn't recognize. Crates of weapons lined the walls, marked for destinations that didn't exist. Elias activated the recorder, capturing every word. The shipment clears tomorrow, Holt said, his voice gruff. 10 million. Wired by noon. Elias's blood boiled. These were his people, his mission, and they'd sold it for profit. He stepped into the light, his gun raised. It's over, Holt. Holt's face twisted with rage. Kane, you're making a mistake. No, Elias said, his voice steady. You did. Ortiz lunged, but Elias was faster, disarming her with a swift move. The suited man fled, and Holt reached for his own weapon. But Elias's glare stopped him cold. Don't, Elias said. I've got everything on tape. Holt's laugh was bitter. You think you can take me down? You're nothing without the army. Kane. And you're throwing it away for what? That's Censor. Elias's grip tightened. Holt's words cut, but they couldn't touch the truth Theo had awakened in him. I'm doing this because it's right, he said. Something you forgot a long time ago. He bound Holt and Ortiz with zip ties, calling in Mara and a trusted team. As they arrived, Mara's eyes widened at the scene. Sir. What? Arrest them, Elias ordered. Treason. I'll explain later. As the soldiers took Holt and Ortiz away, Elias felt the weight of his choice. He'd burned his bridges, but for the first time, he felt free. The warehouse raid changed everything. By morning, Colonel Holt and Major Ortiz were in custody, their crimes laid bare by Theo's recorder and Quinn's files. Elias, 29, stood in the base's command center, facing a room of stunned officers. The evidence was irrefutable, but the cost was steep. Whispers of Elias's involvement with Theo had spread, and the military's old guard wasn't forgiving. His career, his fortress, was crumbling. Theo was released from holding at noon, his bruises fading but his spirit unbroken. Elias met him outside the base, the Willamette River shimmering in the distance. Portland's autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and possibility. Theo, 27, stood with his hands in his pockets, his hazel eyes searching Elias's face. You did it, he said softly. You stopped them. Elias nodded, his throat tight. But it's not over. The army's launching an inquiry. About Holt, Ortiz, and me. Theo's face fell. Because of us. Elias didn't answer. The truth was a knot in his chest, years of hiding, of fearing who he was, now exposed. He'd spent his life running from the river, from the shame that threatened to drown him. But Theo had seen him, truly seen him, and that changed everything. Come with me, Theo said, taking Elias's hand. His touch was warm, grounding. There's something I want to show you. They drove to the riverbank where they'd met at dawn, the same spot where Elias had once considered jumping. The Hawthorne Bridge loomed above, its lights reflecting on the water. Theo led him to a wooden bench, its surface worn but sturdy. Carved into it were the words, "Love dares to cross all lines." I found this a year ago, Theo said, tracing the letters. It's what kept me going when I started digging into the corruption. I thought, if someone could carve this, could believe it, then maybe I could too. Elias stared at the words, his heart pounding. He'd spent his life building walls, but Theo had slipped through every one. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know how to be this. Theo turned to him, his eyes fierce with love. You don't have to know. You just have to try. Elias looked at the river, its dark pull quieter now. He thought of the boy he'd been, the one who dreamed of love without fear. For the first time, he felt that boy stir, alive and unafraid. He took Theo's hand, their fingers intertwining, and the world didn't end. I'm not jumping, Elias said, a small smile breaking through. Not today. Theo laughed, pulling him close. Their kiss was soft, unhurried, a promise of something new. The river flowed on, but Elias no longer feared it. He'd crossed a line, not into shame, but into courage. Months later, Elias resigned from the army, his medals packed away but his heart lighter. He and Theo moved into a small apartment in Portland's Pearl District, a space filled with books, music, and the quiet joy of being themselves. Quinn Adler's expose on the corruption scandal rocked the nation, earning them a Pulitzer and Elias's gratitude. The military's inquiry cleared Elias, but he knew he'd never return. His fight was here, with Theo, building a life where love wasn't a secret. They walked the riverbank often, hand in hand, the carved bench a reminder of what they'd overcome. The city embraced them, its bridges a symbol of connection, not division. Elias had once feared the river would claim him, but now he saw it for what it was, a witness to his rebirth, a testament to the love that had saved him. In the end, Elias didn't jump. He chose to live fully, fiercely, and without shame.